booktube. We haven't done a mail haul in a while on this channel, so if you can manage to draw your attention away from Frida's cute little foot, we will do a mail haul now. There's some mail packages to go through, starting with one that's extremely thin. Is this a slim volume of poetry, perhaps? Or maybe a catalog? Let's see what this is. Slim volume of poetry is probably the most likely, but you never know. This is from Soho Press. Oh no, it's a tiny novel. My, it's a tiny novel by a novelist I know, a novelist I am well familiar with. This is I Wished, a novel by Dennis Cooper. So let's read about this, shall we? This comes out in mid-September. Is this going to be a paperback original? Is it a paperback? No, this is going to be a hardcover. It's only 130 pages, but it's going to be a $25 hardcover in mid-September. And I'm sure it's going to say on here somewhere, this is Dennis Cooper's first book in 10 years. So we'll see if he's lost a stroke. I would imagine that that is the case. We shall see. In this book, Dennis Cooper once again draws readers into a deep-end exploration of the dark nexus of desire, obsession, and longing. He returns to George Miles, a real-world figure who is the author oh boy. Okay, all right. To George Miles, let's chop this up and translate it into English. The author shared an obsessive friendship with George Miles in real life during their teenage years. And in this book, I'm still translating and chopping up a sentence that should never have seen the light of day. And in this book, the authorial gaze has changed. That certainly is not what the writer of that sentence intended. That certainly is not true. The writer of the sentence intended that the authorial gaze changes the relationship. Not that the authorial gaze has changed. There was no authorial gaze when they had an intensive friendship 30 years ago. Okay, let's forget that ever happened and move on to the next sentence and just hope that that was a myocardial infraction. This is not a sixth installment in the author's celebrated and masterly cycle of novels inspired by Miles, which began with 1989's Closer and ended in 2000 with Period. It's not that, the pub sheet is telling us. Instead, Cooper has created something even more personal and open. This is not a memoir. The author is clear that it is a novel, and it would be a mistake to consider it anything else. I'll be the judge of that. If there's nothing in here that didn't really happen, it's not a novel. You calling it that doesn't make it one any more than you calling this a bratwurst sandwich makes it delicious. But I Wished hews far closer to Cooper's real life than any previous novel, and in so doing gives us a story of loss that is achingly melancholic and disturbing, as searchingly philosophical as it is violent. Okay, well now there we're on known territory, because this is a searchingly philosophical and incredibly violent author. These are books that are like stains on your reading eye. He's not for everybody, in other words. I have no idea what he's like in this book. 10 years is an eternity in a writing life. But in his, what I don't have much compunction in calling his great earlier novels, I would offer them with great restraint. I would never recommend a Dennis Cooper book just to somebody out of the blue. They're harsh, they're pornographic, they're intentionally disturbing stuff. So they're not for everybody. I think they're extremely well, those earlier novels are extremely well done. Some of them, especially in long stretches, extremely well done, but not for everybody. Let's see here. Cooper is famous for exploring the darkest side of desire. Few artists can go where he does and avoid the cheapness of a slasher film. That's actually true. That's a good way of putting it. What makes Cooper's sexual apocalypses truly shocking is not that they push up against newfound boundaries, but that they are actual cartographies of all too real spaces. Except on these maps, the notes of "Here There Be Dragons" is not fanciful at all. Okay, what makes them shocking is not that they are real. it's that this author has writing talent. You'd think if you were a publicist writing a sheet to advertise this book to potential reviewers, you might make that choice instead of saying they're shocking because they're so real. And also, I might point out that if the note, "Here there be dragons," is not fanciful at all, there will be dragons in this book, and I guarantee you there are not. The very real John Wayne Gacy features in this novel, and his presence disturbs in a way that only Cooper could manage. Okay, well, I am all for this. This is, despite my cautions, one of my favorite American authors, so I'll be very interested to read this. I wished got a starred review from Publishers Weekly and a starred review from Kirkus. So that's fantastic. It comes out soon too, so I can read this right away, and I want to, because Dennis Cooper is there is a cavalcade of major and major minor novelists who have books coming out in the next 2 months. An enormous array of them, far more than would ever happen in a normal literary season. I believe, as I've said in other places, I believe that the autumn book list for America for fiction is COVID-19 coming home to roost. A lot of book publishing schedules were changed. A lot of dates were postponed. I think that's what's happening here, because it's just an array of names. Dennis Cooper, in normal circumstances, he might be worth more notice in this season than he will be, because he is a fairly major name, and this is a long time. 10 years to go without a book is a long time. But there are so many other names, and I'm worrying that he'll get crowded out. Not by me. I'm going to have a busy September and October, even though I don't particularly like to write about fiction. I will certainly do so. Okay, great. So, a new Dennis Cooper. What a weird and disturbing way to start a mail haul. Once again, this is a little bit odd. He is one of a handful of authors that will produce this kind of an odd reaction in me. You know, if you watch this channel, that one of the first things I think about when I get a book in the mail is whether or not I can recommend it to you, whether or not I can recommend the author to you. And with Dennis Cooper, that's hard to do. Notice that pub sheet that we just read mentions how dark, how disturbing he can be. Doesn't at all mention the fact of homoeroticism. Doesn't at all mention that element. I don't know why you would do that. I'm not sure what the actual book jacket will do. The book jacket is the thing that actual readers will browse in a bookstore. But that the pub sheet is at least in part designed to either draw attention away from what anyone would consider the foremost aspect of Cooper's work, or to deceive. And this is 100 pages, so a reviewer's going to notice right away that this could technically, if inaccurately, be called gay fiction. We shall see. What is the next one? Oh no. Oh no. Oh goodness gracious. Okay. All right. Ever since I did a BroTube video channel on Ryan Holiday, I feel extra touchy about all things Stoic. And then that reminds me, several of you have sent me emails. I leave my email on every video. Feel free to email me about anything. Doesn't have to be about my channel. Doesn't have to sing my praises, although that's really nice. It's not connected to a dummy account. I look at it all the time. It's my inbox. And I live in my inbox. I'm a freelance writer, so I live in my inbox. But several of you pointed out that it has been a little while since the last BroTube video, and some of you who watch this channel really closely have pointed out that I was afraid to do another BroTube video because the one I did before Ryan Holiday caused, as far as I can tell, is the thing that caused a jump in subscribers on this channel of a type that gives me the willies. There are already too many of you. And that, I don't know if that's the reason, but that seems to me to be the reason. And a lot of you noticed that I was worrisome about doing another video and maybe having another jump. That didn't happen. Several of you pointed out that extra jump didn't happen. This is still a 12-nay channel. We are never going to reach 12K. And since it didn't happen, some of you have pointed out, well, maybe that means you could do more BroTube videos because they're really enjoyable. And I have mean to do that. I have several targets in mind. I'm just worried that one of them might be another example where suddenly I get, an influx of dude bros and somehow keep them. I guess some of those dude bros, a lot of those dude bros, just demographically speaking, will be young men between the ages of 18 and 25. And a young man between the ages of 18 and 25 who's listening to me is going to be hearing, at least in part, something he wants to hear. I grok them, as Robert Heinlein would have said. I grok them. So maybe that's why I haven't lost them. But one way or another, this new book is not by Ryan Holiday. So it's who I didn't mock in my BroTube video. Maybe that's the reason that it didn't garner a huge influx of viewers, is that I didn't mock somebody. I couldn't find it in me to mock Ryan Holiday. He clearly believes what he's saying. I don't agree with Stoicism as a worldview. I don't agree really with worldviews at all. Just live. Just live. Just make the best decisions. You have a really good moral compass. Just make the right decisions. And when you're unclear, figure out how to make the right decision. But philosophies always strike me as the bed of Procrustes, where if you're too short, the bed will stretch you. If you're too long, the bed will cut off the parts that are hanging out, and that's not healthy. But anyway, this is not a book by Brian Holiday, but I'm sure that he's read it or has been asked to blurb it. Maybe he has blurbed it. Maybe I'm gonna get bashed. Or no, he hasn't. Oh my. Okay, one major blurb here. This is Breakfast with Seneca, a Stoic Guide to the Art of Living by David Fiddler. Not Fitterer, not Debbie Fitterer, for you Western fans, but David Fiddler. So what have we got here? Robin Waterfield was the blurb that attracted my attention. Robin Waterfield is a terrific translator. Okay, the cell sheet here has a lot more blurbs, but still not one from Ryan Holiday. Maybe he doesn't blurb anything but his own books. He strikes me as that type of author. Oh my God, only blurbs on the back as well. All right, well, what about the book? Are you gonna? Okay, here we go. Stoicism, the most influential philosophy of the Roman Empire, offers refreshingly modern ways to strengthen our inner character in the face of an unpredictable world. I would argue that the most influential philosophy of the Roman Empire is capitalism. But we'll let it go. Widely recognized as the most talented and humane writer of the Stoic tradition, Seneca teaches us to live with freedom and purpose. His most enduring... Show me that in Seneca. Show me that in Stoicism. The freedom that's being alluded to here is the so-called freedom that modern-day acolytes of Stoicism will say you gain when you care about nothing. If you can just make yourself care about less and less, you'll be more and more free. What kind of a way is that to live? Anyway. His most enduring work, over 100 letters from a Stoic, written to a close friend, explains how to handle adversity, overcome grief, anxiety, and anger, transform setbacks into opportunities for growth, and recognize the true nature of friendship. The true nature of friendship? A friendship? That's crazy! The one thing Stoics... As far as I'm concerned, friendship involves taking on the other person. Not taking them on as an adversary, not taking them on as a challenge or an obstacle, but taking them on. You take on their joys, you take on their sorrows, you take on their pain, you take on their obstacles. Suddenly, two are closer to one. That is friendship. You take on the other person and they take on you. Show me that in Stoicism. That absolutely is not there. Anyway, in this book, philosopher David Fiddler mines Seneca's classic works in a series of focused chapters, clearly explaining Seneca's ideas without oversimplifying them. Best enjoyed as a daily ritual, like an energizing cup of coffee, the Stoics on YouTube cannot live without coffee. Can't go even a minute without it. So yes, indeed, the Stoics and the minimalists, who are their spiritual brothers on YouTube, cannot live without coffee. Absolutely synonymous with their worldview, if you want to call it that. Seneca's wisdom provides us with a steady stream of time-tested advice about the human condition, which, as it turns out, hasn't changed much over the past 2,000 years. And yes, indeed, that is, I would argue, very close to the heart of especially the modern Stoic movement. Wisdom that hasn't changed in 2,000 years. Does that remind you of anything? You live in a world entirely shaped and sculpted by Christianity, so that should bloody well remind you of something. And I don't think that's accidental at all. And the implication could not be dumber, which is that only the wisdom that hasn't changed in thousands of years can be relied on. That is the implication. And that therefore, science is not to be trusted. A worldview generated by constantly changing your best theory of the stuff around you. That is the inheritance of the Enlightenment. That is the rationality of the modern world. And it's not to be trusted because it's constantly changing. How can you trust it if it's constantly changing? Anyway. Obviously now I owe this author a very close and careful reading, since I have argued with him through his entire pub sheet. When does this come out? I know there are going to be a lot of you who are interested in this thing, even if you disagree with it. This comes out in December. December, much like August, tends to be a desert of a month for mainstream publishing books. So this will stand out with greater prominence. That's actually kind of wise. For a work of philosophy, it's going to need all help it can get. I know that a lot of you are interested in this. I know that a lot of you like Ryan Holiday, who is, YouTube's foremost Stoic. I'll have to see if David Fiddler, now that I've made the comparison, I want to call him Debbie Fitterer. That's not only bad, but easy to fix. I'll have to. I won't read this obviously until the winter. But I don't want to leave you with, this guy has blurbs from everybody under the sun, so I don't want to leave you with a negative impression. I myself have no truck with Stoicism, none at all. It is codified self-centeredness, and the world has too much self-centeredness as it is. It is extremely codified, intense, unblinking concentration on yourself. When you should be concentrating outward on others. You should be concentrating outward on others. Believe me when I tell you, yourself, the inner core of yourself that you love so much, will benefit much more from looking outward at other people than it would ever do from this arid nonsense. This have a cup of black coffee first thing in the morning, have another cup of black coffee right after that, wear a black t-shirt, wear the solid cow crap ring, and then spout Stoic philosophy all day long about how you have to learn to live with what you can't rise above, and ain't no use complaining when you got a job to do, and any other Bryan Adams or Billy Joel lyric. Sorry. Let's just move on. We're obviously not going to get anywhere with that book, so let's just move on. In fact, let's do a box. We'll do a box to try and calm me down. Do you have a colicky Steve today? Let's do a box and hope for the best. We've got to get this mail haul back on track. Here. Oh, okay, fantastic. All right, well, this one's going to do it. This is not all. I mean, nothing wrong with Breakfast with Seneca. Nothing at all. But this is much closer to my wheelhouse. This is a forthcoming book. All I had, the only paperwork in it was an invoice. I threw it from me as Satan as fast as possible. I don't have a pub date, but I'm pretty sure this is an August release. And this is by Gordon Campbell, and it's called Norse America, the story of a founding myth. And anything to do with Vikings is fine by me, absolutely fine by me. Tracking the saga of the Norse across the North Atlantic to North America, Norse America sets the record straight about the idea that the Vikings discovered North America. The journey described is a continuum with evidence-based history and archaeology at one end and fake history and outright fraud at the other. In between, there lies a huge expanse of uncertainty, sagas that may contain shards of truth, characters that may be partly historical, real archaeology that may be interpreted through the lens of fiction, and fragmentary evidence open to responsible and irresponsible interpretation. This is a book that tells two stories. The first is the westward expansion of the Norse across the North Atlantic in the 10th and 11th centuries, ending, but not culminating, in a fleeting and ill-documented presence on the shores of the North American mainland, Vineland, those who Pynchon fans out there. The second story that the book tells, the second is an appropriation and enhancement of the westward narrative by Canadians and Americans who want North America to have had white Northern European origins, who therefore want the Vikings to have discovered North America, and who, in the advancement of that thesis, have been willing to twist and manufacture evidence in support of claims grounded on an ideology of racial superiority. Okay, that took a turn I didn't expect. Most people maybe I'm wrong. I've assumed that most people who say, most proponents of the fact that the Norse discovered America long before Columbus did, are just interested in that as a fact. They're not denying that there were hundreds of thousands of original inhabitants here when the Norse showed up. They're not denying that fact. They're not saying there weren't original people, unless the racial superiority here is that the Vikings were racially superior to the Italians. Could that be? I guess I'll have to read the book to find out. So this is from Oxford University Press, and the author, Gordon Campbell. I should stress, this is not the Gordon Campbell, the other Gordon Campbell, in case any of you were wondering. In case you got your hackles up, this is not that Gordon Campbell. This is an innocent Gordon Campbell. He's an emeritus professor and fellow in Renaissance Studies at the University of Leicester, and is a fellow of the British Academy. He's written a lot of books. Okay, so I guess I'm going to have to read this. I'm sure it has a short publication date. I'm sure that it's a finished copy from Oxford, so it might be out already. Oxford tends to be really weird about that. They'll either never send me a finished copy, or they'll send me one long after the book has come out in bookstores. But one way or another, I'll have to read this thing to figure out why. It was unclear from that jacket copy. Is the author fighting against people who? Is there a large body of people who say that the fact that the Vikings discovered the New World is some sort of white supremacy thing? And if so, what would be the thinking behind that? Surely no one contests that there were people here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, millennia, before either the Norse or the Italians discovered this country. Surely no one argues that. There isn't any way to argue that. So is the racial superiority here Nordic versus Italian? I'll have to read it and see. I'll read it and find out, and I'll report back. Let's just move on here. This next one is oddly shaped. It feels like a box inside an envelope. It is. Okay, it is a box inside an envelope. The last time this happened was last week. This was how we got a copy of Wendy Holden's book, The Duchess. I don't think I have it right here in front of me. No, I don't. The Duchess is Wendy Holden, the author of The Royal Governess. Her new book coming out in September in America is called The Duchess, and it's about Wallis Warfield Simpson, the Duchess of Windsor, the woman for whom King Edward advocated his throne. And the novel is terrific. Wendy Holden is rapidly becoming one of my favorite living historical novelists. But it infuriated me all the same, because it's totally sympathetic to Mrs. Simpson, and I am not. so I cannot recommend The Duchess enough, because, first of all, you're going to love it as a book, no matter where you stand. And the no matter where you stand is important, because if you think that Mrs. Simpson got a raw deal from history, you're going to love the fact that she gets her song here in Wendy Holden's book. And if you think that if anything, history was too kind to her, as I do, because I believe the worst of the meetings that she and her husband had with the Nazis. I think those meetings are easily open to an interpretation that says that they were perfectly happy to watch her husband's brother be executed in Wembley Stadium so that he could be instituted as a Quisling king. I don't think they would have objected to that at all. But one way or another, if you think that, and the idea of a historical novel that tries to exonerate her gets your blood boiling, then The Duchess by Wendy Holden is going to get your blood boiling in the funnest way possible. It's just, no matter where you stand on the subject, it's going to be an enormous amount of fun. But that's the last thing we got that was in a cardboard box like this. So maybe, is this going to be the fashion to start sending things this way? I'm going to have to come up with a use for these boxes. I think I can. They're wonderful document cases. So what is this? It's rubber bands and cardboard and everything else in the world here. Where is the... Oh, okay, great. I wonder if this is the same publisher that sent me The Duchess. Probably it is, one way or another. Oh my, this book. Some of you are going to know this book. You're going to know the genesis of it. And I should just cut out the formalities here and just mail this immediately to Mark Richardson or to Jason Harrigan. They're both, every once in a while, the members of the OGBG converge into being just one person. And in this case, Jason and Mark. I don't know who. I guess I'll get extra copies and send them to both. This is by Andrew Lawler, and it's called Under Jerusalem, Buried History of the World's Most Contested City. And derives from a National Geographic article from years ago that a lot of you might remember. I think it's one of the most popular novels, most visited novels in National Geographic history, in the modern era anyway, about the catacombs and underground passageways and underground cemeteries of Jerusalem, buried deep under the city. I remember that article. I thought it was incredibly interesting. I've been to Jerusalem many, many times, but Jerusalem is not one. There are a lot of places that I've been to in my travels where I knew people who could get me into places that tourists could not go. Jerusalem is not one of those places. So I had no idea that such places existed. The article was incredible. This book was born from that. But this is just a bound galley. This is just someone taking the pages in the office and just binding them. So I don't know if this is going to have any information at all. It doesn't come in the pub sheet. It probably doesn't have a book description yet. No, it doesn't. Okay, no, this doesn't have anything. This doesn't have anything at all. There's a timeline at the beginning, and there are maps. Yeah, I'm going to have to figure out who to send this to. Do I send it to Mark or do I send it to Jason? I'll just send it to both of them. Maybe I'll review it in the meantime. I'll see if I can get it. Extra copies. Well, no. Okay, so I can tell you what I told you about it, but I don't have any information to actually read to you. That's what this is. This book is an expanded treatment of the subject of that article. So fortunately, in this case, since I don't have any publishing information, you can still figure out what this is about because you can just look up that article. Probably, if you're a National Geographic member, which I strongly advise you to be, you could read it and look at the pictures. This is an expansion of that, of archaeology that goes to Jerusalem, instead of walking around, goes straight down and brings back information. Wonders. Amazing stuff. So, this is... I don't have any information on this. It's coming up, but it's not soon, because if it were soon, there would be printed review copies, and then finished copies. So I bet this is later in the autumn. But how fascinating! How incredibly fascinating! So let's just move on here. Let's move on to this next one. This is one of these adhesive envelopes that you have to fight with, but it's a finished copy. Let's get this adhesive thing out of here. Oh God, another invoice. Get these things out of it. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. I think we've seen this before. It's yet another Viking book. That's great. Vin at Revenant Reads is gonna love this mail. It's all Viking stuff from start to finish. This is the finished copy of Don Holloway's book, The Last Viking, about King Harald Hardrada. An absolutely fascinating figure that shows that he shows in his life, in the story of his life, how badly the Vikings are usually reduced to one dimension. And this is the finished copy. Great. So I got an invoice, but no sheet on it. But I have a feeling, I'm pretty sure that this is a September release. Let's read just a little bit about Harald Hardrada. Harald Sigurdsson burst into history as a teenage youth in a Viking battle from which he escaped with little more than his life and a thirst for vengeance. Sounds like my first and third marriage to Deb. But from these humble origins, he would become one of Norway's most legendary kings. The Last Viking is a fast-paced, moving story of Harald's life as he journeyed across the medieval world as far as Constantinople and the Holy Land. In these early years, he fought both for and against Christian, Muslim, and pagan rulers until his eventual return home to claim his love, his crown, and his destiny as King Harald III of Norway. But restless still, Harald sought to expand his kingdom into an empire and fought to seize both the Danish and English crowns. Ultimately unsuccessful, he died sword in hand in battle against the king of the Anglo-Saxons. His death would mark the end of the Viking Age. Combining Norse sagas, Byzantine accounts, Anglo-Saxon chronicles, and even King Harald's own verse and prose into a single compelling story, Don Holloway, that is the author here, brings to life the true tale of this Viking hero. How fantastic. So this is from Osprey Press, and this is the finished copy. So it will have not only the historical paintings, but all of the bric-a-brac that you would have there. Of course, we don't have much in the way of that, so a lot of it's going to be archaeological and commemorative, but fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Haven't read a biography of Harald Hardrada in years. Long time. In fact, if I were up in Vermont, this is exactly the moment when I would turn to Mark Christensen and say, don't you remember one? What was it? What was it called? Was it called The Last Viking? Was the last book about this guy actually had the same title? I vaguely remember it. It's from the 60s. I think I remember it, but one way or another, yes. The more Viking books, the better. So let's just press on here. I'm glancing out the window because the yappy dog that all of you have commented on, I have a dog in a neighboring building that likes to yap, and so I've mentioned several times, I've reassured several of you several times that there's nothing wrong with him. He's not unhappy. I've gone and visited him, and for some reason he's being completely silent, even though in a yard over there 2 dogs are rambunctiously playing with each other. That ordinarily sets him off, and he's not yapping. And that leads me to think that he's either inside sleeping or he's feeling a little sad. Oh, well, that would be bad. I'm looking at these 2 roughhousing. They're both sort of quasi-pit bulls, and they're roughhousing on the grass, and I feel 2 urges of equal strength. The first one is to go and roughhouse with them, and to hell with the stupid humans that are watching. They're humans just standing there watching. How can you stand and watch instead of getting involved? The first is to get down on all fours and roll around on the ground with them, as I do, at the slightest inclination. And the second urge, equally strong, is to make sure that Frida keeps looking out that window instead of this one. Because if she saw that, she'd go ballistic. You don't play. It's for children. There are mice to be killed. There's a world to rule. Anyway. Oh, great. Oh, fantastic. All right, this is from the great folks at Basic Books. No pub sheet included in here, but that's all right. The great folks at Basic Books include a new face in their lineup, a new face to Basic Books, an old face to me, an old face to the book publicist world, and also to Open Letters Monthly, the precursor of Open Letters Review. So I'm extra happy to get their books when I get their books, and I would be happy to get this thing anyway. This is by Brendan Sims and Charlie Lederman, and it's called Hitler's American Gamble, Pearl Harbor and Germany's March to Global War. No pub sheet, but you're all going to know, a lot of you are going to know the basics of this story. By early December 1941, war had changed much of the world beyond recognition. Nazi Germany occupied most of Europe, while in Asia the Second Sino-Japanese War had turned China into a battleground. But these conflicts were not yet linked, and the United States remained at peace. This book recounts the 5 days that upended everything, December 7th to December 11th. Only with Hitler's declaration on December 11th was the U.S. roped into war with Germany after much uncertainty. Tracing developments in real time, historians Brendan Sims and Charlie Lederman reveal the dramatic days, hours, and minutes in which Hitler made his calculated gamble when the fate of the world hung in the balance. And if I remember correctly, Brendan Sims is, or at least was when I first started reviewing him, shamefully young. Oh goodness gracious, they're both... Oh, Charlie Lederman looks, if anything, even younger. These are our 2 authors. But that need not affect anything. That need not make them ill-equipped to the task. I wonder, I seem to remember the folks at Basic Books saying that this was a reappraisal of those key days. Of course, it was lunacy on Hitler's part to declare war on the United States. That was simple lunacy. When the Empire of Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, the United States had precious little option other than declare war on the Empire of Japan. But maybe Hitler was thinking, I'll declare war on them and it'll be just a formality because they're too far away and too overstretched and too ambiguous on the subject of the war itself, so I'll never have to worry about it. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what the authors have to say on this subject. I haven't revisited that subject in quite some time. This comes out in early November, so still a little bit of time before I actually tackle it, but I'm fascinated to do it. I think Hitler made a small kernel of terrible, terrible choices. He invaded Russia on the doorstep of winter, thinking, as so many people had before him, that the invasion would be basically over before winter happened, or that winter wouldn't be bad enough to inconvenience his troops. That is simple insanity, and there isn't a single person who has made that gamble who hasn't regretted it. And Hitler might have been dumb and insane, but he knew that, and he was hoping he'd be the exception. You're never the exception. So if you're building a plan on being the exception, you're in big trouble to begin with. And another huge mistake, one of those kernels of mistakes, is to declare war on the United States, thinking the United States is going to take that lightly or not be able to respond. It's a very bad idea today, and it was a very bad idea then. It looked less like a bad idea then. If you'd looked at America's, basic charge sheet at the status of their standing army or whatnot, or the political ferment in their newspapers, you might have thought then, this might be a gamble that pays off. It was after that America went on to permanent war footing. Now it would be sheer suicide to do. People can say, well, America's pulling out of Afghanistan. They clearly lost that war. Take a look at the cities of Afghanistan. It depends on what you mean by win or lose, but it was a bad idea to do. It wasn't Afghanistan's idea, but it's a bad idea to taunt the greatest military superpower in the history of the world. Even if the results aren't exactly what you think, they will never be what you want. Maybe these authors are going to say that there was something to this, that there were elements of this whole subject that I haven't considered. That's what I love about reading history, is exactly that. So I'm perfectly open to it. We'll get the finished copy later on in the year, and then I'll dig down into this book. Hopefully I'll get a chance to review it somewhere high profile. Or somewhere low profile, like for instance, Big Canoe News in northern Georgia, a print newspaper in northern Georgia that comes out once a month. It's very small. No one's ever heard of it. Hardly anybody gets it in the mail, but you can subscribe and get it in the mail and mail it anywhere in the country. And it's got 2 full color spread pages of books coverage. 2 whole pages, fills a whole floor of books coverage, and that's my books coverage. I am the books editor for Big Canoe News, so there's always that to write for. But then we've got this last package, then we'll be done with the mail for today. So what have we got here? This is another one of those sticky packages. But let's see what we have here. Oh, great. Okay, all right. This is the day for basic books. This is I'm pretty sure this is another imprint of theirs. This is Hachette. So this is Basic Books, Osprey Publishing. And this is another thing that we've already seen. This is the finished copy of The Bronze Lie by Mike Cole, which is aiming to take the Spartans down a peg or two. I don't, again, have a pub sheet for this, but I'm pretty sure this is coming up soon. What have we got here? The Spartan Hoplite, that's their rank-and-file soldier, enjoys unquestioned currency as history's greatest fighting man. The last stand at Thermopylae made the Spartans legends in their own time, famous for their toughness, stoicism, there's that word again, and martial powers, and for their refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds, even when it meant certain death. That also sounds like my first and third marriage to Deb. Was this reputation earned? Or was it simply the success of a propaganda machine that had begun working long before the battle at the Hot Gates? That's Thermopylae. Covering Sparta's full classical history from the foundation of the city-state through to its final overthrow by Rome in the 1st century, this book examines the myth of Spartan warrior supremacy and paints a very different picture of Spartan warfare, one punctuated by frequent and heavy losses. It looks at the major battles and with a special focus on previously underpublicized Spartan reverses that have been left largely unexamined by history. It reveals why Spartan society became dedicated to militarism and examines the men who lived under its brutal rule. The result is a refreshingly honest and accurate account of Spartan warfare that challenged long-held myths about this ancient Greek society. Fantastic. Once again, as I said with Hitler's American gamble, I love this aspect of reading history and biography. It gets my hackles up a little, especially when an author decides that they're going to try to rewrite history in a way that history doesn't support. But I love it anyway. The fact that history is not settled, that new scholars are coming at it all the time with new ideas, looking at the same evidence and ripping that evidence to pieces, holding it under a microscope. I love that. Absolutely love that. I myself have never bought the myth of Spartan supremacy. You don't have to read much of the surviving, primary documents of ancient Greece history to not really buy that. but it's interesting that this author is the cover copy for the book anyway is saying that this author says that publicity campaign started even back when the Spartans were still a ruling city I would have thought that it was much more a product of much later centuries. But one way or another, I haven't read this yet. I'm pretty sure this is a September release. But this is the finished copy. Those of you who are ancient history buffs are probably going to want this. And you've got the nice little, I don't know if you can make it out there, the nice little borders at the top and bottom there. Osprey makes a very nice, understated product. So there you go. That's our mail haul. Sorry it took a long time. We have The Bronze Lie. Were the Spartans all they were cracked up to be? We have Hitler's American Gamble. Why did Hitler declare war on the United States of America? We have The Last Viking, finished copy, The Life of Harold Hardrada, the larger-than-life life of Harold Hardrada. We have Under Jerusalem, in an extremely advanced copy. This is an expansion on a National Geographic novel about all the archaeology buried under Jerusalem. We have Norse America, challenging the myths of the Norse discovery of America and how it's been used and misused throughout history. We have Breakfast with Seneca, a Stoic guide to the art of living. Those of you who are interested in Stoicism, this is your latest big release. And finally, I Wished by Dennis Cooper. Slim little thing, the skinniest and the newest novel from Dennis Cooper, who hasn't written a book in 10 years. Once again, I want to stress, Dennis Cooper's books are not for everybody. So some of you do me the honor of taking my recommendation seriously, and you might be hearing that I'm recommending Dennis Cooper. I am recommending the past novels of Dennis Cooper, but I'm not recommending them just broadcloth. They're disturbing. So if you're not into that kind of reading, or if you're not up for that right now, I can make recommendations of a large amount that are similar but that don't hit those notes. But for now, that's enough mail for now. I think, believe it or not, that more mail is coming today. And if any more does come, and I'm still presentable, I'll make another video. In the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up. But I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.